Hey guys, so today we're going to be editing these photos. This one we're going to edit first and it'll be shorter, mainly just color correction. This one is more in-depth because of the details in the skin. So I saved a copy of the file and we're going to open it up in Camera Raw and just adjust some minor settings. So we're going to bring the highlights down a bit, and then we're going to increase the shadows quite a bit as well, so it's not as dark, and also increase the blacks. We are not going to do tone curve, none of that. We're not doing HSL, but in the next one we will. This time we're going to be doing split toning. So I'll increase the highlights to a kind of cyan color and increase the saturation of that quite a bit. Sometimes it's easier to adjust the saturation first, so then you can see what color you're adding in. And we're going to enable profile correction. That will get rid of the vignetting from when you use a very wide aperture lens at its widest aperture. You'll often get some vignetting. So then open it up in Photoshop, and we're going to do selective color. I love selective color. I feel like it's the most useful coloring tool in Photoshop. I want the lights to be kind of more of a cyan color to provide contrast with the orangey tones in the shirt, and now the skin is honestly pretty orange looking. I love changing the whites and the blacks. That's my favorite part about selective color. So here we can make the parts of the lights that are more white a bit cyan colored, and the blacks, you don't want to adjust the blacks too much, just by usually like 2 or 3. And then we're going to add a curve. We're making an S curve, but I don't want it to be too drastic, and lift the shadows a little bit. Now we're going to do color balance and kind of fix up the weird coloring we got too. So changing midtones, then highlights, and in the end you'll see I kind of strike a balance. And then we're just going to crop it in closer, get rid of some of the excess parts, and we are good. So now we are going to edit this photo. And as you can see, it's pretty dark when we started out, but since we shot in RAW, we can really change the color temperature, we can change exposure, lift some of the shadows without getting too much grain. And we're going to increase the contrast a little bit, increase the highlights a little bit, and definitely increase the shadows. I really almost always increase the shadows and the whites and the... So now we're playing with the HSL curve. So we're going to just change the colors around a little bit to see where they kind of look good. And we also want to keep it consistent with the other photo we took and edited. Hue, saturation, luminance. The hue is what color each color appears as. Saturation is how colorful they are. Does that make sense? And luminance is just how light or dark a color is. And then we're going to do some profile correction again, but we don't want as much of the vignetting gone as before. I'm going to open it up in Photoshop, and we're going to create a new layer, and we're just going to fix the skin up really quick. Obviously it took me way more time than what you're seeing here. I sped it up quite a bit, but basically I'm just using the heal tool and getting rid of all that hair that was in front of my face and a bit of the dark shadows under my eyes. And we're just going to fix the chin and the forehead and any random parts. And once I'm done editing, I always like to go back and look at what I've changed, so I just check and see what it looked like before and after, and if it's good. And now that looks good, we're going to merge down. So now we're going to duplicate that layer and use dodge and burn. So first I just like to burn all the parts of the hair that should be darker, just to give it more dimension and depth. I'll usually also make the eyelashes and the eyebrows darker, but I didn't in this time. And we're just going to lighten up the parts of the face and give it some kind of a contour. Honestly, if you know how to do makeup, or if you've watched contouring makeup tutorials on YouTube, you kind of know the placement of where you want the shadows and highlights. Lighten up the bridge of the nose, a triangle under your eyes, and cheekbones. And we're also going to darken up the sweater just to make it kind of less noticeable. And here we are making my cheeks look more blushed. So you're just going to want to take a color that is naturally in the photo, and it takes some time to figure out what color it really is. And sometimes it can look really unnatural, but once you put it in as color blending mode, it should all look better, and then reduce the opacity so it looks kind of normal. And now we are going to blur the background a bit, so we're going to select my face and my hair. You don't have to worry about being too exact in this instance. And we're going to expand the selection just to encapsulate all of my hair and all the flyaways. And expand it once more because I didn't get everything in there. And don't worry if it's not totally getting everything in. So then we're going to fill it with content aware, so it will naturally fill it with what it thinks it should have based on the surrounding areas. So now we're just going to fix up some of those flyaways and the unnatural coloring it created. And we're just using the heal tool for this and selecting the most natural part. Honestly, this doesn't matter that much because we're not going super close to my face. We don't need to be extremely exact because we're just blurring out some lines a bit more. But in some cases, you'll want to be very exact with this. So now we're going to apply Gaussian Blur, and it'll just give that photo a bit of separation between the subject and the background. If you were shooting with a wall that was farther away, you really wouldn't have this problem, and I would honestly recommend that, or with the background that you think fits the image. These are kind of just random photos I took in my room, so we're just going to create a layer mask and use the brush tool and just brush on all the blurred background. If you've never used a layer mask before, I would recommend looking up videos. It's basically just a cutout through which the effect is applied. And here we're just going to fix and get rid of the lights at the bottom, the string that goes down. So now we're going to be increasing the detail, and this is a method you can look up, but just basically create a layer, do surface blur about 25 and 25, then invert the colors and change the blending mode to vivid, and then merge it down, and then you're just going to change the blending mode to overlay, and it will increase the details. And again, use a layer mask and invert it so you're only applying the details where you are painting, and just paint on some increased details in the eyes and maybe some of the facial features like the mouth. Just decrease the opacity so it looks pretty normal. So now we're going to do some color adjustments. Here we're just changing all the colors again. So when I Photoshop and change the colors, I honestly just go with what my gut feeling is and what I think looks good and I like stylistically. I like to think about the feeling, the vibe that the photo is giving you. So sometimes I tend to make them a bit more drastic in the beginning and then tone it back a little bit, just so that I know I'm definitely giving that vibe. So now we're just going to kind of change the curves the same way we did before and lift the shadows a tad bit. And now on to color balance. I feel like color balance is really a great way to get the colors looking back to normal while still maintaining that stylistic vibe. So once we're done with all of this, we're just going to copy that again and decrease opacity just because I want it to be a bit more intense. And then we're going to, with our curves, we're just going to lighten up the face a little bit more because I feel like it was kind of dark and in the shadows, just with the way the lighting was set up and how the room was dark in general already. So I kind of like where this edit is at, but I also want to make the reds a bit brighter to stylistically look more similar to the other photo. So we are going to be changing the color of the reds and making it more of the pastel kind of tone. I guess more salmon colored. And I like how that's looking, but we're going to maybe just brush it off of the lips a little bit. And then for this curve, we're just going to be lifting the shadows so it's not so dark. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed and learned something. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you want to. See you on my next video, probably featuring a cat.